Hello, I'm Emily with Montessori Collective. Our mission is to expand access to Montessori preschool in underserved communities. So, why Montessori? Children in public Montessori classrooms show a significantly higher rate of academic growth, including both literacy and math, compared to their peers in conventional preschool. And the impact of increased growth lasts into later grades. Children who attend Montessori preschool scored higher on reading tests in second grade compared to their counterparts who attended conventional preschool. Even more impressively, public Montessori preschool decreases the income achievement gap. Over the course of 3 years, the gap between the high income and low income Montessori students narrowed by 2/3, while the gap remained stagnant in conventional classrooms. In fact, by the end of the 3 year study, the difference in achievement between the low income Montessori students and the high income conventional students was not statistically significant, indicating that Montessori is highly effective at closing the achievement gap that has plagued public education since its inception. Perhaps most importantly, Montessori increases students' executive functioning. Executive functioning encompasses a wide range of skills, including self control, working memory, and planning and organization. Executive functioning is one of the strongest predictors of positive life outcomes through adulthood, including academic success, health, financial status, positive social behavior, and even happiness. And the effect is significant. People who had strong executive functioning skills as children were more than 2 times less likely to have multiple health problems as adults than their peers with low executive functioning. And they were 3 times less likely to abuse substances, live in poverty, or be convicted of crime. Executive functioning is a stronger predictor of life outcomes than childhood family income or IQ. Increasing children's executive functioning in early childhood has significant lifelong benefits. Psychologists are just beginning to understand the conditions that support the development of executive functioning, but a few key elements stand out in the research. First, children develop executive functioning skills by engaging in deep concentration and by participating in environments where their independence is encouraged, with intentional scaffolding when needed. We also know that the greatest opportunity to impact executive functioning skills is between birth and 7 years old, when the brain undergoes rapid development. Education reform efforts have attempted to address the persistent achievement gap by putting children of color and those from low income families in more and more restrictive and punitive schools that focus on compliance rather than problem solving, critical thinking, or independence. This is the exact opposite of what is needed. When children are in overly controlling environments, we rob them of the opportunity to develop the critical executive functioning skills that will set them on an early path to success. On the other hand, Montessori environments have proven to increase students' executive functioning skills. One of Montessori's primary goals is to foster independence in children from a very young age. The goal is not to control children, but to allow them to develop the skills to care for themselves, make decisions, and solve problems in an environment that allows freedom within limits. Children in Montessori classrooms are joyful and love learning. They are curious and confident problem solvers and develop independence while also working together in a community, laying a foundation for lifelong learning. Rather than denying children the opportunity to develop their executive functioning skills by placing them in classrooms that exert external control and continuously fail to close the achievement gap, let's expand access to Montessori in the most formative years, where children can flourish and lay a foundation of executive functioning, academic, and social skills that will serve them for their entire lives. There are two significant barriers to expanding access to Montessori in public schools: funding and support. The impacts of Montessori education are greatest when an authentic Montessori approach is in place. This requires the purchase of Montessori materials and training for teachers. Both of these are costly, and most public schools do not have the budget to invest in them. Therefore, Montessori Collective will provide Montessori materials and scholarships for teachers' training. Additionally, Montessori differs greatly from traditional education, so many of the structures of support in conventional schools will not fully serve Montessori teachers. Therefore, Montessori Collective will provide ongoing support to teachers and administrators through professional development and coaching, with a strong grounding in equity and anti-racism. We must ensure that we are liberating children from oppressive practices, not perpetuating them. We will also support schools with technical requirements such as licensing waivers that must be in place for Montessori classrooms. Additional offerings from Montessori Collective may include parent-toddler classes, in which families can bring their toddler or infant to a specially designed Montessori environment and observe them interacting with a Montessori teacher. Montessori Collective takes a small fires approach to expanding access to Montessori. Starting a new school or developing an entire program is a monumental task. But with the support of Montessori Collective, traditional public schools can start by converting one conventional classroom to Montessori. One small fire. The investment and risk are minimal. If you approach a community and ask if they want Montessori, they may say no. But if people experienced Montessori, communities cannot choose what they do not have access to. With a small fires approach, schools allow families to experience Montessori for themselves and then empower them to advocate for the education they want for their children. A growing body of evidence shows the positive impact of authentic Montessori education on academic and executive functioning outcomes, while also decreasing the income achievement gap that has persisted for decades. Montessori has been practiced for over 100 years and is currently experiencing a resurgence in the United States. We know that it works, but our children in marginalized communities have very limited access to Montessori classrooms. The Montessori method, paired with anti-racist practices, will transform education. Let's invest in our youngest learners and give children an environment where they can truly thrive, not just survive. Join us in igniting a fire.